Hey everybody, this is Spoonie, and well, Homeworld 3 was a letdown. Throw it on the pile, I guess. I usually like to wait a day or two for some reviews to roll in so that I can gauge whether or not I want to risk buying titles that carry the kind of hefty price tag that Homeworld 3 carries. After all, for $60, a game needs to keep my attention for several hours before I personally consider it money well spent. And maybe it's nostalgia that had me go against my better judgment here when buying this game, or maybe I was just feeling lucky because of how good Hades 2 was, even for being early access. But with Homeworld 3, I didn't even make it a full hour before I was bored. I checked how long I had been playing, and I was shocked that it had only been about 30 minutes, when I thought it had been much longer. That's the inverse experience a developer wants, and the inverse experience of playing a great game. I should be somewhat grateful though, I guess. I was able to get a full refund since I hadn't played for a full 2 hours. But I'm still disappointed to see how shallow the gameplay was here. The visuals are updated and the new derelict stations in the background are really nice, but the campaign was unengaging and dry. But I didn't buy Homeworld 3 for the campaign, so I fairly quickly decided to leave that behind and jump into some skirmishes, because after all, that's what I loved about Homeworld growing up and what I was really excited to relive here. But relive it is really all I did. There was no growth to the gameplay. Once again, like is all too familiar with sequels in recent years, the game played exactly like its predecessors, just with modern graphics. There was also what felt like a lot less strategy to the gameplay. I remember playing Homeworld 1 and 2, massing up ships, and using the rock, paper, scissors mechanics to prioritize the ships I needed to flank the enemies with my counter units. But here, I didn't need to prioritize anything. I was able to have a constant stream of ships coming out of my mothership and upgrade to newer tiers without ever needing to look at my resources. I always had a surplus. And the matches just devolved into a giant brawl within minutes. With head-to-head motherships spewing out low to mid-tier units, there was no point in utilizing the terrain or flanking anything. That's if you were even able to, because with the new derelict stations and ships, I found myself having a really difficult time changing elevations or flying around obstacles. Normally, when you right-click an empty space, you get options for more advanced ship movements, but when right-clicking near an asteroid, ship, or derelict, you just issue a blanket move order. This became really frustrating as those things take up the majority of the battlefield and are really hard to avoid. To be fair, if the game wasn't $60, or if it wasn't a Homeworld title, I don't think I would be such a harsh critic. But as it stands, this game is really just a point-and-click adventure disguised as an RTS. They risked nothing here. The missions drive you through encounters with little to no meaning, and the skirmishes are just the same thing we played in the previous 2 games. The new game mode they added also doesn't really change the gameplay. The new War Games mode is just co-op skirmishes, but with side quests. This game plays exactly like the game did nearly 25 years ago, and while the graphics are admittedly nice and performance was stable even in larger battles, the explosions and destructions of motherships felt a little choppy and dated. Oh, and the terms of service, privacy policy, and EULA are legitimately insane. One of the worst I have ever seen. They gave themselves permission to do just about anything they want with just about everything they can think of, including your private personal information and credit card data. It was bad enough that I for once almost didn't click accept and just returned the game right then and there. This went way beyond the typical boilerplate terms of service agreement that we all just too often blindly click accept on. This was bull, which is just a shame. For a lot of people, Homeworld was their first foray into sci-fi games, and for literally everyone, it was the first time playing an RTS in a 3D environment. When the series premiered in 1999, it was a game that not only took a massive risk, it pioneered games like Sins of a Solar Empire, and I would argue that it had a massive influence on games like Stellaris as well. They expanded on those risks in 2000 when their first expansion came out, and again in 2003 with Homeworld 2. And while I did enjoy the remastered collections released in 2015, which I refuse to believe was almost 10 years ago already, the nostalgia quickly wore off as it did again the next year with Deserts of Karak. It was nice to revisit the titles, but they didn't keep my attention for very long, at least not as long as they did when they first came out. I thought that maybe my tastes had changed, or that maybe I just wasn't in the mood for a spacefaring RTS, but I think it's more than that. After thinking about why I was so disappointed in Homeworld 3, which honestly isn't that bad in comparison to Homeworld 2, I think it's because the bar is just so much higher than it was 20 years ago. Just spamming a bunch of smaller ships out of my bigger ship just doesn't hit the same way as it did back then. Not when I don't need to build up to it, and I can just start and end every match by doing the exact same thing. Games never never last long enough for the resources to truly matter, and the method of acquiring them is just one click early on in the match. The genre has just evolved past that, and we as players have come to expect a little bit more. Those same mechanics aren't exciting like they were when Homeworld 2 first came out, because there's nothing new here. It's like meeting up with an old friend and realizing they're the exact same person they were 20 years ago, except now they're trying to steal your data. Don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps my channel, and if you want to stay up to date on gaming news and developments, make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.